Hello everyone, I hope you are all doing well. First of all, I'd like to welcome you to our today's AITS Talk webinar, AVEVA Workflow Management. I'm sure that most of you have worked, tried, or at least heard about the workflow management solution, or you might know it with its legacy name as Wanderer Skelta. So as we have mentioned in the invitation, this week is the Workflow Management Week. And yesterday we have already conducted the sales session. While today the session will be a technical one with more demos and practical cases. For that, I'm having with me my colleague Abdul Jalil, who will be guiding us for the coming 45 minutes. So please be reminded to type any question you have during the session in the question box, and definitely we'll be answering all this question at the end of the session. Now I'll just wish you an informative session, and I will leave you in safe hand with my colleague Abdul Jalil. Hi Abdul Jalil.
Hi Nader, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope that everyone can hear me and see my screens.
Yes, we do.
Okay, thank you very much. So the objective of today's session is to share a technical walkthrough on AVEVA workflow management system. So by the end of this webinar, I hope it will give you a kickstart for designing enterprise business processes digitally using AVEVA Workflow Management. It was called before Skelta, and now there is a new naming called AVEVA Work Tasks. AVEVA Workflow Management or AVEVA Work Tasks. It was Skelta before. So the agenda for today is mainly to get you an overview of what is in workflow management system. So we will do a sample business scenario with very simple business process. So we will design it and we will execute it. And at the end, I will show you how we can monitor these business activities. So what exactly AVEVA Workflow Management? It's a framework for designing and executing digital industrial work processes and procedures. This is by definition. That means how it is accomplished. It has a graphical design tool for building business processes called Process Designer. It has a tool called Forms for designing user interfaces, and it is always adaptable to mobile apps, iOS, Android, and Windows, and use offline mobile apps available. And it can be connected to any type of systems, including real-time and operational data and from other systems. And at the end, as I would like to say that the product is available on cloud and on premise. So this is what a brief definition of AVEVA Workflow Management. As for today, we are planning a simple incident management system. Any incident or breakdowns or alarms, you can say alarms also, has to be reported by some means. It can be from a sensor, it can be from a user interface, it can be from anything. So for the sake of showing user interface of AVEVA Workflow Management, we will be using Skelta Forms to design a user interface that can create an incident. Then what we will do is we will be storing this data in an external database. We will connect to an SQL Server database and we will store it there. So we will be connecting, our workflow will be connecting to an external database. Then obvious that whenever we get an incident or breakdown information, someone has to notify, for example, maintenance or operations. So there will be a help desk. They will be receiving the incident and it will tell it's a human activity. That means he will tell, okay, inform maintenance or inform operations. For the sake of this simple workflow, what we are doing is, if they want to inform operations, they will send just the details to the operation guide. If it is information, that means it's a major incident. So it will go to an approval from maintenance department or maintenance head or something. So it will, if it is approved, then they have to do some checklist activity based on some criteria. That means, let's say, for the sake of this scenario, we are using weather situation. So based on the temperature value, they will be doing hot checklist or cold checklist. To get the current weather situation, we are accessing an open weather API service, okay, from Open Weather Map. It's a service provider for weather conditions. So we will be accessing through our web API connectivity. So during this session, we will be showing two types of connectivity. One is for a database, one is for a web API. So now we are going to access our workflow management solution. So the workflow management solution is accessed through Enterprise Console web application. So we have a shortcut for that, and we will be accessing it through this interface. So this is the interface for AVEVA workflow management. Maybe in some customers you might see different interfaces because it is very tightly integrated with any type of programming environments. You can see ASP.NET screens. So once you log in, it will be presented with a dashboard view. Normally, an inbox will be displayed for any user who access the workflow management, whatever the activities that he's supposed to do and what are the information that he's supposed to receive will be listed in the inbox. Okay, so and there are some other items that you can configure as web parts for the home screen. And as you see here on the top left, the burger menu, it will list major components of or modules of AVEVA workflow management. Is inbox directly and workflows list. This is the list of workflows where you will create and access workflows, forms, and there are a lot of other settings, tools, reports, and packages list. These are the modules inside AVEVA workflow management. So here, for the sake of our scenario today, we have two integrations here. One is for storing the data in the SQL server, and the other thing is to get the weather data from an external service. So first, we will create the connectivity to these systems. So what you have to do is you have to make the external connectivity through the settings menu, go to database connections for making database connectivity. So here let's go and create a new database connectivity. So we will call it as an incident DB. Okay. Incident database. So I don't want to connect to the Skelta database. So I'll just uncheck this, and I want to connect to, so I have an SQL server here. The server is GR platform, and I have a database called WR, and I have a table there to store the incident. So I'm connecting to this database. So what I have to provide here is the server name, then I have to say what is the authentication. Let's say I'm using SQL Server authentication. And then I have to say which database I'm going to connect. test connectivity. If the test connection is successful, then save. Okay, now we have a connectivity to the database. The second thing, the second connectivity that we need as part of this workflow, because the remaining things are internal to Skelta. So the second connectivity is to get the weather situation. So we need to connect to an web API. So in some scenarios, you might have a lot of connectivity. You might need to connect to ERPs. You might need to connect to other systems. So here we are connecting to weather API. So we need a web API connectivity. So this is what we are going to do now. We will create a connectivity to web API. So click new. So here we have to give a name. For example, let's say web API, weather API. Okay. And for each API, there will be a base address. Okay, this will be provided by the API service provider. Actually, the openweathermap.org is the site. And if you want to access their APIs, you have to use like api.openweathermap. And then this URL will be the base URL, as you see. Localhost my site will be like this. And then you have to pass the parameters and the API key. Web APIs, whenever you want to access a web API, you need an API key. That will be the app ID, which is a parameter to this, and one mandatory parameters. And then preview it and see whether it returns values and values. That means the connectivity is okay. You can save it. Save. Now we made both connectivity, external connectivity that is required for this sample scenario. So let's go to the workflows. So we need to create a workflow. So workflow, always you go to workflows list and then click new, click workflow, then give a name. Let's say it is breakdown workflow. Save and continue. So now we created a workflow. You can design the workflow right away. So by default, it will create an activity called start. And if you see on the left hand side, you can see what are the activities that you can include in a workflow design. Process designer is the application to design the workflow. This is the major component of AVEVA workflow management. A set of different types of activities are there: human activities, integration activities, and engine activities, scheduler, communication, a lot of activities, different types of activities. Human activities means that requires some human interaction. For example, approvals. It requires to be someone has to do something. Manager has to click a button to approve. Integration means when you connect with, for example, web API. In our case, we are connecting to an open API service. So we need to integrate with that system. That's why it's an integration activity. So by default, the start activity will be created. And if you go to the properties, you can see that variables and XML variables. That means in this in any of for example, if you're familiar with programming, you can see that there is a declaration section. You will be having variables, XML variables. Everything is defined here. XML is one of the key thing that in Viva workflow to pass the values between different components. As you see, by default, there will be one XML variable will be created. So this will be mainly who's creator of this workflow and these things. So for the time being, I will close this, and as per our scenario, what we have to do is we need to create an incident through a user interface. This is what we are planning. So incident will be created from a user interface of Skeleton. So for that, we need to access forms. So I will just close the workflow for the time being. I will go to forms. So I'll just save it. I'll close it. I did not add anything to workflow because the first step is we need to get an incident from a user interface. So we'll go to forms. We'll create a new form. Okay. You can name it as BDNG, breakdown NG. I need a very simple form. Design the form. So as you see the form, it's look like any other programming IDE environment, but you don't use much code here. That is the beauty of AVEVA. So let's say I want to have just two fields to be passed as the incident details. So let's say I need one more text field. Let's say this one. To change the properties of this, you go to properties from here and change the name. For example, it is the title of the incident. Okay, so apply. Now this is changed. The second thing, I want to have a description of the incident. So I will type like description. Okay. And here description, I need it like multi-line. I need like 10 lines to be seen there. So I have a description field. I have two fields now. So to make it very simple, I just added only two fields. And then what I have to do is I have to call that workflow. So we have an action called or a control that can add to the form to invoke workflow. So when you click on this button, you have this data will be passed to the workflow. So go to the properties. I don't want to have anything as a text there in the name, so I will not type anything, but the XML node is a must because every field and everything in workflow will have an XML node value so that it can be accessed as a variable. So here you can call it as called help desk. Okay, and we are calling a workflow. So what should be appear on the button? Let's say we can call help desk, and which workflow we need to connect. We have to select the workflow that we need to connect. So breakdown. This is the one that we just created. So we need to connect to it, the latest version. Okay. We will be connecting to that workflow, and then we have to say an XML variable. We have to provide an XML variable name so that this information will be stored. This title, description, information will be stored in a variable. So I'll just name it as BD data, and the schema of this variable should be, we have to select it. We click on this button, and then you can say, okay, this is the form, exactly the form. So we don't want to design a XML work file. You can just say form. Okay, now, and one more thing I want to do, whenever I click this, I want to close the form. So you can say close form. Okay, apply. Now we design the form that we are supposed to use. Okay, and we can just see how it will be appearing in a mobile device. So every form, whatever we design, it is applicable to the mobile devices. So you can see how it will be appearing in a mobile device. This is what the device preview. Okay, close, and we can publish this form and publish this. Okay, form design. The form is published. Now we will go to the workflow again. So now we completed as per our scenario. Incident can be created. The next thing is that we need to store in an SQL server. How we are going to do this? So we will go to the workflow and we need to insert to a database. How we can do that? We can go to engine activities. There is an activity called database activity. You can drag it here, or you can just say add to the right of selected activity. So it will be added to the right of start activity. So database activity is for doing some activities on database. So right click activity properties, and then go here and select the database connect. This is what we named incident DB. This is the DB that we are going to connect. Okay, and then you have to save, otherwise it will show an error. So just save it, and then you go to the query field. So you have to say what action that you have to do. What you have to do is you have to insert these values into a database. Click on this. So then we need to run a query, an update statement or insert statement to the database that we, what was our table name? It was WR table. And what are the fields names? You can see that WR title and WR description. Okay. So here insert into WR table values. What values I have to give it to them? So I will give it as some parameters. So these values have to be obtained from the XML variable that we passed from the form. So we can click on load parameters, and then it will show title, description. These are the parameters. What is the type of values? These are string values are coming up. Okay. So what should be the value of this parameter? This should be the title in the form. So we go here to the expression editor, one of the key component of AVEVA workflow management. So it has a lot of features, but anyway, we go to workflow instance, we go to the XML variables, we can see that there is a new XML variable. This is what BD data. This is what we created in the form. Okay, so we just drag title. So now you can see that title is from the title of that XML variable. So the other thing, description also is a string. You go here, go again to workflow instance, XML variables, BD data, and we have here description. So this is the value that I want to pass to the query. So what it will happen, insert into WR table values, title and description. These values will be saved in this database. Yes. So now what we have here, we have the database activity. We go to the same workflow. We did this, store in SQL Server. The next thing is that a help desk is receiving this request. He has to decide to inform maintenance or inform operations. To do that, we need a human activity called choice. Okay, so right click, add to the right of selected activity. You have some pending changes. Okay, so let me save this first. Okay, so the choice activity, as per our workflow, we need to inform maintenance, we need to inform our two choices are there. So we can add this here, action outputs. Let's say I want to notify maintenance. And if you notify maintenance, that means this choice activity is completed. So this is a completion mark. So then notify operations. This is also a completion because if you click on notify operation, this choice activity or the help desk role is gone. Now we have to say, we have to assign to someone, okay, who will be choosing. This will be the help desk guy. So I want to assign to a particular user. All the human activities needs an actor who will be acting on this. Let's say I have a user called help desk. Help desk. So this will be assigned to the help desk, and he will decide notify maintenance or notify operations. Let's go back to our workflow again. So in case of inform maintenance, we need an approval activity. In case of operations, we need to send an information. Okay, let's finish inform operations. To do this, we need an information activity needs to be added to the below of selected activity. Okay. Here we need to say what is the thing that we need to, information has to be sent to someone. Let's say we send to a particular user called AITS1. Okay, this is a user, this is an operations user. So we will be sending this information to this guy. And what has to be sent, we have to decide in the notification contents. We go here and select, let's say, we need to send the details of the incident to this particular guy. Title, and we can get the title of the whatever we entered in the form using this XML variable. Go here, take title. Okay, and let's say we need to have the description also here. We can have it, add it, the description. Okay, so this information we will be sending to the operations. Now we have to say on this link, right click and say that this is in case of notify operations. In case of the choice that is selected by the help desk to inform notify operations, this will happen. So now what we need is, we need to have an approval activity from the maintenance side. Right click on the approval. Okay, we need an approval activity. Approval activity we need to the right of choice. Okay, so approval means it will, this is going to maintenance, and we can set the link condition here first. It will be based on what? Notify maintenance. If the choice is notify maintenance, it will go to approval activity. Okay, so in the approvals, what we need to assign to a particular manager or user who is going to approve this. So let's type AITS2 is the one. Okay, great. Approval is assigned to a particular user, and then save this. So if he approved, what is next to be done? If it is approved, we need to get the weather data from weather API. We already have the connectivity here. We just want to have an integration activity to call a web API. So this is invoke web API will be added. So in case of what? In case of this approval activity, approved. If it is approved, it will call the web API, and what it is going to do, it is going to get some data from the weather API. Okay, and we need to save these values in an XML variable, because all the complex data types, whenever it returns, we can store it in the XML variable, and we can access it by field. Let's create a new field, a new variable. We call it as weather. Create. So now we are calling the weather API, that API.openWeatherMap, and then we are storing the return value in an XML variable. Okay. Now, as per our workflow, we need to check whether the collected temperature is greater than a particular value. If it is greater than, you go and do a hot checklist, otherwise a cold checklist. Okay. So now we need to do a checklist activity. Let's go back to human activities, or checklist activity based on a rule. So we need to check this first. Okay, we need to design a condition here by a rule. I'm just adding right of the selected activity. So, okay. Rule is to check whether a value, that means we can put a condition here. What is the condition that we want to put? Condition is on an XML variable. What is the XML variable? The XML variable is the weather one. That means the returned value from the web service. What is that? It is a very complex thing, as you see. It's a very complex variable, and we will take the temperature value. You can access field by field. Value is, let's say, greater than a particular value. So as an example, I'm giving 100. So if the collected value is matches this condition, we need hot checklist, otherwise a cold checklist. So let's go back and go to field activities, add the checklist, right of selected activity. So what it should be included in a hot checklist. So we need to say this. You can go here, add, let's say I have 2 questions. Okay. I will say in the case of hot weather, so fire extinguishers available. And I need a yes or no answer. So I have drop down with 2 values. Okay, and rooms are closed. To avoid sparks, actually. So drop down with 2 values. Okay. Next, so we say what are the values? Yes, no. We have a lot of settings here, like default values, and so finish. So now we have a checklist for hot checklist, in which case this is, it is it is true. The rule is true. Okay. The mistake I selected error. This is true. And then if it is false, the condition is false, we need another checklist that called checklist. Add to the below selected activity. So here I'm going to add, let's say that one question. Okay, let's say he's wearing blazer. It's a cold weather. So let's say drop down to values. Next. So yes, no. So you can see there is a red mark on this checklist because it didn't assign any actor who is supposed to fill this. So let's say I have AITS 2. Okay, so AITS 2 or AITS 3. AITS 2 be assigned already. So AITS 3. AITS 3 will be the user to complete this checklist. For the same, for in both cases, the maintenance technician is the same. So I'm assigning AITS 3 for both checklists. Okay, update. So now we just want to verify that every link has to have a condition. For example, invoke web API, then it goes to rule, but it should say that if it is successful, invoke web API is successful. And we can put unsuccessful things and we can handle the exceptions, we can do that. But for this symbol one, I am not adding anything. And here it is on false. Rule is false. Then you execute the cold checklist. Rule is true or checklist. And then here also it is notify maintenance. And here it is, if the database activity is successful, then you go to the choice activity. Now we have the workflow is ready. And we can check before we publish it, we can check validate definition if there is any errors or anything. No errors, so we publish it. So this is the workflow corresponds to our sample business scenario. Now I am going to run this. Okay, so before that I want to publish this. Okay, this is published now. Now we are going to test it. How we are going to test it? We need to create one incident first. Okay, and then we need to see each user how they are going to get this. Okay, and so let's go here. This is the view this form. Let's view this form, and we can enter, let's say, pump broker or pump failure. Pump failed. Okay, now we call the help desk. So what it's supposed to do is it will create a record, and then the help desk guy has to decide what to do next. Notify operations or notify maintenance. Now we are admin, we are not help desk. So we will log in as help desk and see help desk. His username is help desk. So we can see there is an information came to his screen. Okay, he has to do something. Double click. What he has to do is he has to notify operations or notify maintenance. Let's notify maintenance. Okay, so it's the longest path. So now this activity is gone from his list. He completed it. Now who should receive this AITS2 has to receive for an approval. So let's log in as AITS2. Let's see what he's received. Yes, he received an approval request. So he has to open it and he has to approve or reject. Let's say he approved. So this is gone from his list. Now it will be based on the temperature value it is collected. It will go to the AITS3 user. He is the one who's executing the workflow, the checklist. So here he got a checklist. Let's see the checklist based on the temperature value. Okay, this is cold checklist. It's not greater than 100. It's a hot checklist. So you provide the values, you submit. So for each user, who whatever he's supposed to do, it will come to his inbox. And once he is done with this, it will go from the list. So we designed a workflow and we executed it. And we can monitor the workflows through business activity monitoring. So here, go here again with admin. We will see here we can see that we go to reports. Okay, to monitor the business activities. Here we can see the workflow statuses. How many workflows are run? Okay, one workflow is finished. Okay, workflow instances. It will not list anything because there is no running workflows. If it is running, for example, before the approval, if we check here, it will show an instance. Okay, and the execution. You go to the execution part or the transaction part, or what are the activities done. Okay, work item detail, transaction type details, escalation report if there is any escalations, my activities, activity time details, because this all the transactions related to it. Is there any executing workflows? Is there any waiting, completed? There is a completed workflow. Okay, you can see that. Okay, completed, and it's what are the activities that is done. Choice. There were approval. There were checklist. So if there is a fail, aborted. So all the if you open it, you can just it will be looking in an execution view. What are the activities completed? If you want to verify something, variables or something, you go here and open it and you can see it, and you can see what are the steps that is taken, very detailed, very sophisticated error reports. If you see face some errors, you go here and you see the details on each activity. You can see it here. So this is what the business activity monitoring. So with this, I would like to say that I'm going to conclude this session. So any type of business processes that can be developed with AVEVA workflow management with less or without programming, because I did this without programming. If it is a little bit complex, you can do with programming. or if you can program it, you can do very, very amazing things with this. Okay, so I'm finished with it. Thank you, Nader.
Thank you, Jalil. Thank you, Jalil, for this valuable session. So, as discussed before, we will give just a few minutes for the audience to raise their question. Please,
Okay.
you can just type it in the question area. So far, we have received a few. So let me just check and start with the first one. Before that, yesterday, Abdjalil, during the sales webinar, we have received a question regarding the integration and and the compatibility with the other ERP systems like SAP. So just if you can little bit tell us about the integration with the SAP system, for example, or other ERP system, how it's done.
Yeah. Okay. Let me tell you regarding the integrations, we have a lot of open tools. We can integrate with any type of systems that can provide APIs or web services. For if it is specifically for SAP, we could say that we already have a built-in connectivity with SAP. Okay, if you go to the workflows, I just want to show you this, that SAP system can be connected with built-in, configured. We have configured activities inside. Okay, so I just want to show you this. There are two ways. Mainly, whenever we communicate with SAP through business APIs, SAP has BAPIs and SAP has RFCs. So we support SAP activity. We have two activities as you see here. BAPI RFC execute, or we can connect to SAP tables also directly. So for SAP, we have built-in customized things ready for connecting to whatever the BAPIs and RFCs they are exposed. And for the others, we can use the SAP table. And for the other ERPs, we mainly use integration through web services and web APIs.
Okay. Okay, perfect, Jalil. So let me start with the questions. We have a question saying assigning tasks should be to one person only. What if we have to assign to a team multiple persons?
Okay. So this will be related to human activities mainly. So for example, a particular activity has to be done by a particular person. You can do directly, you can assign to that particular guy, or you can assign to a team. If you see my screen, you can see that assign actors. That means you can assign to multiple guys the same time. Okay. And also we have a method called queuing inside workflow. It's an intelligent way of handling a team. If you have multiple people, so it will not be assigned to everyone. It will be assigned based on a logic inside. Some algorithms will be used. Based on that, it will be assigned to anyone. Okay. So it will be based on less number of tasks. For example, a particular guy has less number of tasks, or he's not busy, based on the calendar information that Skelter has inside. So we have both methods. We can assign to multiple peoples. Everyone will receive the same, or we can assign to a queue, and the queue will have an intelligence to assign to a particular guy or a different guys.
Okay. Second question, a long one. How we can integrate with system platform? Say we have an alarm for the pump number 1 and operator want to assign the maintenance team for generating the work order. Once the maintenance team finished the job, the plant operator should close the work order if finished, or else maintenance team should request for spares if required. So
Okay.
how the integration?
Okay. This is a very typical scenario. That means the real-time systems, we will be connecting. We already have connectivity with the system platform. We have orchestra events and orchestra activities, so we can connect with that. And we have workflow, as it is an AVEVA product, we already have built-in gateways for AVEVA workflow. So we will be monitoring the real-time values there. For example, the pump values, and based on that, it can create trigger a workflow. And based on this, for example, the maintenance system, if it is required to connect to the maintenance system through any methods, for example, it can be a web service, it can be, normally we connect to EAM maintenance systems through web services, and then it can inform someone, for example, through emails or through other communication methods. So it is a very typical scenario, and this will be built in for a Wonderware system platform. Built-in gateways and connectors are available inside.
Okay, perfect. Next, we can have users from Central Active Directory as well.
Yes. Actually, in case of workflow, because we can have multiple set of users, maybe it is the Skelta users and the Active Directory users. So it will use a data bridge internally in Skelta to join all types of users into one area, and then the access will be granted based on that. So we are using an internal data bridge to consolidate all user providers together.
Perfect. Okay. Can we include the developed forms in custom mobile application or web access?
The question is to include
The developed forms.
Okay. The developed forms from the Skelta, it is available in the Work Task mobile app.
Okay. Okay. If a manager wants to proceed with the approval, he needs to sign in from his specific account, or it can be done through mail. Okay. The manager, if he wants to proceed with approvals, does he need to sign into his account, the Skelta, or it can be done through email?
Yeah, it can be done through email. Actually, it can be done through email, and also we have an add-in for Microsoft Outlook. So if we install this Microsoft Outlook, he can access the same screen as from the Outlook, and he can do the activity, approve or reject, or whatever the action that he's supposed to take, he can take from his mailbox.
Okay. Next one. Can we connect to an existing database instead of creating a new one, like update a record in existing database?
Yes, it is possible through the database activity, whatever the external data, as I showed you in the second activity. So we are connecting to a database, a separate database, non-Skelta database. So we can insert, update, select any activity that we can perform there.
Okay, great. We still have a few minutes, so just if anyone still have some question, please feel free to type it. In the meanwhile, just wanted to remind everyone, because we are receiving some comments and questions regarding the recording. Definitely you will be receiving the recording of this session after the end, after we'll finish the session, and you can share this one with your teams or anyone who couldn't attend today. And in the same time, I want to remind you that you will see now the links for our social media platforms, our LinkedIn page, our Facebook page, the YouTube channel, especially where you can find all this recording as well there. So please feel free to follow us there to make sure that you are receiving all our news and updates. So back to the questions. Can I integrate with Mqtt Broker? Abdul?
Yes. For IoT things, MQTT devices will publish the data to Mqtt brokers. So AVEVA workflow management can connect to Mqtt brokers, and we have MQTT connectivity from. It's already configured. It's a built-in feature of our system.
So doable.
Yeah, it's a doable.
Next question, how about integration with Wonderware Historian alarms?
Yes, it is also a built-in feature because as it is an AVEVA product, there is already historian events can be monitored from AVEVA workflow, and based on that, it can trigger a workflow.
Okay. Okay, great. Let me check if we still have new questions. If we missed any. Anyway, even if someone have a question and he didn't have the time to write it, or we missed to answer it, just make sure that later we'll be sending you the answer by an email. Okay. So Abdul, I think that's all for today. I want to thank you so much for your time and for all the answers that you have given. I want to thank everyone for their participation and for joining us today. So thank you so much again, Jalil.
Thank you very much, Nader.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.